Okay. I think I figured out how to actually record myself in here. I have my webcam set up, which is lower quality than my regular camera, but that thing has a huge lens on it, and so it was like right up in my face, and neither of us want that. So I'm going to use this camera and see how it works. What I'm doing today is recording Brief Gambit, the short story that is kind of the synopsis, but not really, more like a story so far of the first 3 books in the Ethereal Earth series that'll lead you up to get you ready for the release of Dawn Raised, the 4th book, if all of that makes sense. I'm in the booth today. I've got my microphone set up over on this side, over here, and my screen over here, which you can't see. I usually offset my microphone a little bit because I really hit my plosives, and I kind of always had trouble with my S's, and so they get a little bit sharp. And so if I talk this direction, past my microphone, then that kind of cuts down on that problem. So I won't be looking directly at the camera. Hopefully that doesn't weird anybody out. I'm only going to read the first introduction in this video. This video is going to be more like a making of, and then in a separate video, I will attach the actual edited recording of Brief Gambit. So that'll be released tomorrow. I'm making them at the same time. YouTube doesn't like it when I try to release multiple things all at once. So I'll release this, the making of, and then I'll release the actual recording of just my voice with the full edited story. So if you want to come back to the story at some point and re-listen to it, or if you don't care about the process, then you don't have to listen to me going through all this nonsense at the beginning. You can just go straight to the other video, the story, and I'll link both of those together in the descriptions. So I'm going to start with this introduction, and then I'll cut to the editing process, and hopefully you'll see kind of what's involved in the whole, the whole process with getting this recorded and then taken from raw audio to something that's ready to be uploaded to Audible. Most of my books are like 15 to 20 hours long, so basically take whatever you see here and multiply it by 20 hours, and that's how long it takes to do this stuff. I am by no means a professional narrator, and I think that will become very apparent within the first sentence, probably. And so a lot of the things I do are probably not things you should emulate if you're interested in becoming a narrator. So I'll just say that right off the bat, that I do things a certain way to kind of accommodate my limitations, but also maybe accentuate some of the strengths that I have, and make those work to my advantage. So like I'll record 20 versions of a line that I want to have a little extra oomph, and I'll leave them all in. And then when I go to the editing process, I will pick the one that I think works the best. And a lot of narrators don't do that. A lot of narrators do what's called punch and roll, which is, I think, when you are going and you mess something up, and rather than just doing another version of it, you kind of roll back over top of that line and re-record that line so that later you save yourself editing effort. And that's amazing. But a lot of times I'll record a bunch of different versions of a line, or I'll think I messed something up in the pronunciation, which happens a lot, and I'll re-record it, and then when I go back and listen, I actually kind of like the first version better, and so I'll keep that one instead. And that happens to me often enough that I just keep everything in. I never record over any take. That way I can take what feels like the best one when it's time to edit it. That's part of the reason why it takes me so long. I will definitely mess something up in the beginning of this, so I'm sure you'll see what I mean in a second. I think that's it. At some point in the future, I may go through and do a full video of all the steps, including like how to sound treat your booth and things like that. I've got, behind me, I've got regular foam that I think I just ordered off of Amazon, but in front of me, I have the much more important sound panel that's full of rock wool, and that's what catches your voice and keeps it from bouncing all around in here and making it sound like I'm in an empty box, So there's a lot of tips like that I could go on for an hour describing all the things I learned about sound treatment and microphones and, just technique. But that's not really what I'm going to do on this video. If people really want that from me at some point, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Again, not a professional narrator, so probably you'd be better off going to watch videos of people who do this more regularly. I record a book once a year, and I end up making the same stupid mistakes every single time. So maybe you don't want to emulate me. Anyway, I'm gonna give this a shot, and we'll see how it goes. Here we go. Spoiler warning. The following is a very flippant, spoilery. Spoilery. This is the kind of stuff, I'm immediately stopping already, but the version of me that writes this stuff comes up with cool, interesting words like spoilery, and I don't even consider that is incredibly difficult for me to get my mouth around. And so writer Josh is a little bit of a jerk to narrator Josh when it comes to kind of some of the ridiculous words that I come up with, or some of the things that like Gabe or Heather say that are really quick and snappy, and I have to get my mouth around those things. So a lot of what I end up doing is just cutting all that nonsense out and trying over and over again to get a word right so I can cut and paste it in so it sounds like I actually know what I'm doing. Let's start over. Spoiler warning. Spoiler warning. The following is a very flippant, spoilery recap of the events in the first 3 books. However, it is not a formal synopsis. Those things have all the fun and personality of weekend calculus homework, so I only write those under duress. Which means this little scene will not be a good way to catch up if you haven't read the first books. You may actually be left more confused by reading this, to the point that it generates false childhood memories or pulls random skills out of your brain in a kind of vortex of negative comprehension. You may lose the ability to recognize grapes, or you may forever have to think really hard about whether the word you want to say is conscious or conscience, and sometimes still get it wrong because they're both brain things and that stupid second N slips out so easily. Anyway, these are the risks. But if you have read the first 3 books and optionally the short stories, then you should have the necessary mental framework to proceed. Please use this story as a way to remind yourself what the heck is going on up to this point. Then you'll be all ready for Book 4, Dawn Raised. Brief Gambit, an Ethereal Earth Story by Josh Erickson. And I'm going to stop there, because already that's going to take a while to go through and edit. I actually did better than I expected to. I was concentrating a little harder. But I am going to re-record that introduction to the story, because I feel like I said ethereal a little weird, and so I'm just going to give myself a couple options. Since that is, an important piece of information, the series name, I will often, even if I feel like I got it right, will often go back and do a couple takes of that. So do that really quick, and then we'll cut to the editing. Brief Gambit, an Ethereal Earth Story by Josh Erickson. Brief Gambit, an Ethereal Earth Story by Josh Erickson. So, of those 3 takes, I felt like I did something a little bit weird in all of them, and so what I might end up doing is taking bits from each one and combining it to make one decent one. Also, I just said I inevitably make the same stupid mistakes. I forgot a really important thing you're supposed to do at the beginning of any recording, and that's pausing to leave some dead air called room tone. And we're going to use that in the editing process because we're going to fill in a lot of things with that dead room tone. It's kind of like an eraser almost to make everything sound professional so that when you have headphones in your ears, you're not getting a weird buzz or, me clearing my throat or something. So instead of doing it at the beginning like I'm supposed to, I'm going to do it at the end and then remind myself later in the editing process that I did that. So here we go. And that's enough. Just a second usually is enough. So now we'll cut to the editing. Okay, and now, hopefully this is recording properly. I've never really done this before, but now we're going to edit the audio part of it. I just have pulled out a sample of the very beginning of the recording, just the little intro, because I don't want to include any spoilers for anybody who wants to watch this part but doesn't want to listen to the story itself yet. So it's just my introduction with the spoiler warning, and I'm going to show you what it takes to edit it. I think it's about a 5-minute clip, and I won't meticulously edit the whole thing. I'm just going to show you an example of what that is like. So first thing I do is, this is the raw audio. This is exactly what I got from recording in the booth, and we're just going to play that now and see what it sounds like. Spoiler warning. The following is a very flippant, spoilery Okay, so already you can kind of hear, hopefully it comes across, you can kind of hear that it sounds really quiet and almost hollow. And that's because my gain is a little bit like the volume that my microphone records at in the booth is just a little bit low because I don't want it to accidentally pick up like an air conditioner running somewhere else in the house, or a car driving by, or things like that are way outside the sound booth. I want it to just record my voice, so I keep it a little bit lower, but that means that I have to do something to fix that so that it doesn't sound totally quiet to you. So the first thing I'm going to do, though, before I fix that, is remember I had to add that, go all the way to the end, I had to add that room tone noise that I forgot to do in the beginning. So what I do for that is, and I know there's inevitably going to be somebody out there that is going to be shocked that I use a free program like Audacity when there are like really professional programs out. You maybe don't care, but somebody inevitably cares that there are better programs for recording, and I know that, but I learned with Audacity, and it's free, and Audacity is really actually super good for recording voice. For recording music and mixing and things like that, yeah, you may need more. I don't know. But for me, so far, Audacity has produced awesome results. So just for the one person out there who happens to care about something like that, that's my thoughts on that. So the first thing I'm going to do is do noise reduction. No matter how good your soundproofing is or your sound treatment is inside your booth, you're going to have some kind of noise at the back. And so if you look at this little sample I have right here and then watch the sound output here, what you want is a noise floor, like just a bass sound of under this 60 right here. And if you watch when I play this here, this selection, it pops up to like 54. See, even a little higher. And that's too high. If I turn it way up, which I'm about to do in a second, you're going to hear like a buzz in the background. You may be able to hear that buzz right now, actually, because I'm recording in my office with my loud computer fans and cars driving by and stuff. And we don't want any of that in the audiobook recording. So first I'm going to go up to Effects and go to Noise Reduction and get my noise profile, which is the selection I've made. Then I'm going to select the whole file and go back to Noise Reduction and hit OK. And it's going to go through and pull out all the little weird hums and things. And when I make that same selection, now see how it's around 60? That's good enough. That's going to be good enough for our purposes because my booth is pretty quiet. So that'll be just fine. Oh, and then also what I need to do is I need to grab like a half a second of this empty audio, and I'm going to play it one more time and see how this didn't like do any weird peaks or anything. It just was kind of a nice steady little hum. That's what you want. And I'm going to copy that because I'm going to use that like an eraser later on. So now, oh, actually, see, I just made a stupid mistake. I can't use that silence because I have to do a couple more effects on it, and that silence isn't going to match anymore. So this is what I'm talking about. I make the same mistakes over and over again, and a professional narrator would not do any of this stuff. So next, I need to go to Effect, and I need to increase the volume. I need to make it so it is listenable. So I'll go to RMS Normalize, and I hit OK, and it makes everything way bigger and louder. Then, before I even listen to it, I've got these places here where it peaks out because I'm not a perfect narrator, and I'm not great at controlling the volume of my voice. So I have to get rid of these, otherwise it's going to sound, it's going to like buzz, either be way too loud or it's going to buzz in your ears, and Audible won't even accept it if it's outside the like safe, comfortable listening range. So I have to go back over here and go to Limiter, and it's going to knock off all those peaks and make everything nice and even like that. So now when I listen to it, hopefully this isn't too loud. There we go. Spoiler warning. The following is a very flippant, spoilery That's way better. That's way more like what you would get off of an audiobook. So we're close. Now, I go to, you can go to Equalize. I don't really use that a whole lot because I kind of am happy with the way my voice sounds on recording. As happy as you can be listening to your own voice. But you can use equalizing and kind of like accentuate the bass or knock off some of the high notes. The one thing I need to do, though, is I think probably in this sample I don't need to do it, but a lot of times I need to use this tool, the DS. I had a speech impediment when I was a kid, and I still kind of struggle with it kind of my whole life. And I couldn't say my S's correctly. And I tend to overcorrect that, and it creates a lot of sibilance and high whistly sounds on my S's, especially when I'm getting really, like a really big action scene or something. And so I have to knock those S's off, and I used to do that manually by going in and adjusting the waveform myself, but now I can use this nice tool. And these plugins are part of a larger program from Isotope, or Isotope or whatever, and this is where the expensive sound production stuff comes in. These plugins can load right into Audacity, or I can go into the program itself and use them, but I like doing it here, and these are professional grade tools. This was, several $100s to get this kind of stuff, so you do have to make some investments. It can't all be free if you want, the good stuff. So, now I'm going to, so I don't think I need to use the DS, but I am going to go in and do the mouth declick. And that's all the weird little like pops and clicks and things that your mouth makes just naturally. But I like to remove those because I think it's super distracting. So I'm going to do that. And it brings up this tool, and I can hit apply because I already know my settings are good. And if you watch over here, you can see how many clicks it's repairing as I go. And we just let that tool run, which is super boring for you to watch. And I suppose I could fast forward this, but I don't know how to do that tool in my video editor yet. And I don't really have a use for it otherwise, so I'm just going to vamp and fill time until this is done. Okay, so it repaired a ton of clicks. Now, most of these probably weren't necessarily things that I would have noticed that would have bothered me, but there were probably quite a few, probably a few hundred. And I used to do all those manually. I would go in and I would very carefully take them out and reduce the volume on them or get rid of them because it just drives me crazy. I know some people like that ASMR-y thing, but not when you're listening to an audiobook. That drives me insane. So those are gone now, hopefully. And if there are any egregious ones, then I can take those out manually. So now we'll listen to the sample again.
Spoiler warning. The following is a very flippant, spoilery
See, this is what I was talking about. This would be like an egregious one. See, that right there is just like my tongue clicking. So what I need to do now is the main part of editing is go through. First I need to grab a sample. I'm going to go from the same place and we're just going to test it. And it looks okay. I know I talked about that peak level. I think it's probably all right, but I can check by running this tool, this ACX check. Yeah, I failed. So I'm still too high on my noise floor, so I'm going to go back here and we're going to run noise reduction again. And you don't want to do this too often because you'll get weird artifacts in your recording, but I can usually run it twice, maybe 3 times and not have too big of a problem. I'll run this check again. And I passed because my noise floor is below that threshold and my RMS level is right in the audible threshold. ACX is the audible back end where narrators and authors upload their stuff. So this tool just checks to see if I hit criteria, and this does. And I use this as a general criteria for all my audio, even videos and stuff, because it's just a nice listenable range and it just works for everything. So so I'm good there. So now I can take that little half second, if I can click on it, this half second of audio, and I check it to make sure there aren't any weird little bumps. If there was a weird bump, it would look like that, and I'd be able to, sometimes you can hear it, sometimes you can't, but I don't want to copy anything with a weird sound in it because I'm going to be using this a lot. So now I copy that sound and go back over here all the way to the beginning. And
spoiler warning. The following is a very flippant, spoilery spoilery.
So I'm going to take all that out because all that is useless to me. So now I have to go and find where, and I talked about some audio stuff here. Shoot, just lost my place. I talked about some audio stuff here, and before I start,
it is incredibly difficult for me to get my mouth around, and so Heather say that are really quick and to get a word right so I can.
I think this is where I start again.
Let's start over.
There it is. Okay, so
spoiler.
We're gonna go from here and zoom way out and go all the way to the back, and we're going to paste in that silence. So now, the beginning, I've got
spoiler warning.
Cut out all that nonsense of me rambling. Now I get to do the actual editing part.
Spoiler warning. Spoiler warning. Spoiler warning.
And I like the first one better, so I'm going to take this one out. Also, while I'm doing it, I've got this. And those are breaths, obviously. And you can see kind of what it looks like. Just this little breath mark, and you can spot them. Once you learn what they look like, you can spot them everywhere. A lot of narrators leave these in because they're a pain in the neck to take out, and that same RX7 or RX8 or 9 or whatever version's out now, it has automatic breath control in it,
but it makes it sound a little computery. Even the best ones that I've found, no matter how much you tinker with it, it still kind of leaves it in. And if you use the tool heavy enough to take it out, you can tell. And maybe not everybody can tell, but I can tell. I can hear the weird absence of it because it doesn't deal with the pauses well. A lot of times I will sneak in a breath in the middle of a sentence, and I don't necessarily want that pause there. I want it smashed together. And so in an instance like this,
It's homework, so I only write weekend calculus homework, so
if I just were to take this out and not put anything there, what was it, about that much?
calculus homework, so I only write
It's weird. And so that's what a breath control app would do. And so I kind of pare it down and smush it together.
calculus homework, so I only write
And so it's seamless. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually take that breath out, and I'm going to put my pause in, and probably more of a little pause there. And and I only have half a second here, and I want like 0.7 seconds. So I'm going to do that, because that's, again, an audible like standard. And so I just do it for everything. The people don't like being like instantly assaulted with the track. They want just a little pause at the beginning and a somewhat bigger pause at the end to kind of process, get into the groove and then process what they just heard. So Audible has like a set amount of seconds at the beginning and at the end that they require for every track to make everything sound natural. So here's what we have so far.
Spoiler warning. The following is a very flippant, spoilery recap of the events in the first 3 books. However,
and normally in a book, I would take this breath out. It's not even loud enough for you to visualize it, but you can hear it. But since it's me talking to you in this case, not Gabe or Heather, I tend to leave those unobtrusive ones in. And then during the actual book recording, I take out almost every breath, and I do it manually, but then I only leave in the breaths that are there for a reason. So like if I say somebody sighed or somebody pauses, or if I leave it in for effect, every breath that's in there is in there on purpose. And that way I can use it artistically instead of just like I'm a human who has to breathe. I know a lot of people don't care that the breaths are in there, but I like using it for like an acting effect. So I have to take all the rest of them out. So I will probably just leave this one in here when they're unobtrusive like that.
it's in the first 3 books. However, it is not a formal synopsis. Those things have
And I took an extra little pause here because I probably needed to, get my head around the next line, but I don't want that much of a pause, so I'm going to shorten it by pasting in that silence again.
not a formal synopsis. Those things.
It's still too long.
It is not a formal synopsis. Those things have all the fun and personality of
better.
weekend calculus homework, so I only write those under duress. Which means this little scene will not be a good way to catch up if you haven't read the first books. You may actually
And that's too much of a pause. I'm just going to go ahead and take this breath out so it doesn't sound like I'm panting all the time. And for this joke to land that I know is coming up, this needs to be tighter. I can't have these big pauses in here, so I'm going to probably have to make all of this tighter as I go.
good way to catch up if you haven't read the first books. You may actually be left more confused by reading this, to the point that
See? Needs to be tighter. Pull that in.
confused by reading this, to the point that it generates
And I don't want that breath.
to the point that it generates
Nope. And I've got a weird little artifact at the end of that breath because I missed a little bit here. So I zoom way in and take that out.
to the point that it generates false childhood.
Sounds a little awkward, but I think it's okay. I could probably tweak this some more, but usually your ear skips over it.
To the point that it generates false childhood memories or pulls.
And again, and this needs to be snappy, so I'm going to zoom way in and make sure I get the whole breath this time. And I'm going to take almost all of this out.
Memories or pulls random skip.
Yeah.
Creates false childhood memories or pulls random skills out of your brain in a
It's a little awkward.
false childhood memories or pulls random skills out of
Still a little awkward, but I think it's probably the best.
creates false childhood memories or pulls random skills out of your brain in a kind of vortex of negative comprehension. You may lose the ability to recognize grapes.
And I think I want to keep that breath because it's me being goofy, and it may help the joke.
Vortex of negative comprehension. You may lose the ability.
Okay, I messed up, so I'm going to roll that back because there's a breath in here and it sounds weird when I do that. So I'm going to try not to cut that breath off entirely and just do this. Oops.
Of negative comprehension. You may lose the ability to recognize grapes, or you may
And I'll tighten this.
recognize grapes. To recognize grapes, or you may forever have to think really hard about whether the word you want to say is
Okay.
word you want to say is conscious or conscience, and sometimes still get it wrong because they're both brain
I want that tighter.
wrong because they're both brain things.
Nope, nope, nope. That's too tight.
Still get it wrong because they're both brain things, and
You know what? I think I liked it the first way.
get it wrong because they're both brain things, and that stupid
enough.
second N slips out so easily. Anyway, these are the risks.
And I'm going to pull this out.
Slips out so easily. Anyway, these are the risks. But if you have risks, but if you have read the first 3 books and optionally the short stories, then you should have the
Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and stop there because we've got a minute of this done. Now, I have no idea how long this has been recording, but it's been way longer than a minute. So that's why it takes me so long to edit the audiobooks. I record the audiobooks, and usually for every hour of finished audio, once I'm all done with this, I've probably recorded 2 hours of raw audio, and I've edited 4 to 5 to 6 hours of it to get it down to that perfect 1 hour. I know there are a lot more shortcuts. I know there are better ways to do this. I could do that punch and roll. I could use a better audio editor. I can, there are tools I can use to speed things up, and those are all viable, perfectly acceptable ways to do it. I think of my audiobooks more as like handcrafted things, as like kind of bespoke to both the series and to you. And since I'm unique as a narrator in that I'm also the writer, I know exactly what beats I want between which things and how much of a pause there was when I envisioned the scene. And so I want to put all that in manually. And so really I think of it as like I'm hand carving this stuff. And it's perfectly acceptable to use like a CNC machine equivalent sound, editing software. But I want to sit on the porch and whittle out this audiobook for you so that when you get it in the end, you can see absolutely every place that I've touched. And that's important to me. And so that's why I do it this way. And that's why it takes way longer and why I make stupid choices about how I process this stuff. But hopefully that was interesting to you. I'm going to go through and edit all the rest of this, and then I'll release the full story of Brief Gambit and then get right back to recording Dawn Raised.
So that's it. I hope that was interesting. Look for the release of Brief Gambit, that short story that'll catch you up on the series. Should be tomorrow on this channel or wherever you're watching this right now. And then the next time you hear my voice after that, it should be the release of Book 4, Dawn Raised. So I'm so excited to get that out to you. And until then, I'll be hard at work getting it ready. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.